It was, for sure, a political speech. It's supposed to be the President's State of the Union, but it's an election year. It's always political. So, Rick, past few weeks, Democrats, a lot of them have been panicking ever since the special counsel in the Biden classified documents case, Robert Hur, came out with his report saying that Biden, is an elderly man with a very poor memory. Concerns about his age right at the top of the list for Democrats and really for voters across the country. How did he address them?
Yeah, President Biden has always had the same response when people question his age. He says, watch me. Well, they did last night in numbers that, as you mentioned, they're probably not going to watch him again until Election Day this fall. So in that sense, those Democrats have calmed down largely in the last 24 hours. They feel a lot better. I think what this did was reset the presidential race to where it was always going to be, which is extremely close. A lot of Democrats have been worried to see Biden slipping in his approval rating, slipping in the polls and the head-to-heads. And now that has the potential now to at least stop or get slowed a bit. And to look, I've talked to aides for months, Terry, that have looked at this date and said, look, State of the Union right after Super Tuesday, this is when it all begins. And I frankly was very skeptical of that because I don't know how much these State of the Unions really matter. We'll see how it plays in polling, but I do think in terms of the messaging last night, he did exactly what he needed to do.
And Jay, let's turn to the Republican response. Senator Katie Britt of Alabama, sitting at her own kitchen table, offered the Republican response that she says under Biden, families are hurting. She articulated with great precision and deep emotion every syllable of that speech. Got a lot of attention. What's the reaction up there on Capitol Hill?
Yeah, it's the emotion that critics of Senator Britt are really harping on today, saying that in their view, that speech was, as one lawmaker said to me, overacted. Hammy is another criticism of the senator. Katie Britt was picked for this speech because she is a rising Republican star, and frankly, she's popular on both sides of the aisle on Capitol Hill. Now, today, while some Republicans have privately said they weren't fans of the speech, it's notable that a rising star in the Republican Party is not getting a real full-throated defense from congressional Republicans today. The most notable defense of Senator Britt has just come moments ago when Senator Tommy Tuberville spoke with a reporter for the Huffington Post, and he said that Senator Britt was picked, quote, as a housewife, not just as a senator, someone who sees it from a different perspective. Senator Tuberville has a history of comments that he may view as helpful that may not end up being helpful to the senator.
Yeah, he's got his own style, his own unique style. Mary Alice, on the war between Israel and Gaza, the president made a major announcement. A new temporary port on Gaza's coast will be built by America to deliver humanitarian aid. What more do we know? And politically, since we're talking politics, do you think this will help Biden with those voters who have been registering their distress over his policies in the Middle East by voting uncommitted in the primary?
Yeah, Terry, the White House making very clear that they think the humanitarian crisis in Gaza is reaching a fever pitch, that absolutely more aid needs to be delivered, and that's why the U.S. is now going to this extreme measure of building a temporary port on the coast to try to get more basic food, water, and other aid into those residents, into those Gazans who are in desperate need. But look, whether or not it's going to do anything to make some of those progressive members of the president's own party feel better about U.S. policies, maybe on the edges. I was struck, though, there in the chamber, we saw progressive members of Congress holding up signs such as calling for a ceasefire, some that said signs that said stop sending bombs. I mean, at the end of the day, what a lot of these progressive members want is for a dramatic change in U.S. policy that stops U.S. support of Israel, and that's different than sending more aid to Gaza.
Absolutely, still a major challenge for the president. Mary Alice, Rick Klein, Jay O'Brien, thanks very much. And for more reaction to the president's address, let's bring in Michael Franklin, who's the founder of Words Normalize Behavior Communication Shop, along with Jesse Moore, former White House speechwriter and Associate Director of Public Engagement during the Obama administration. So, Michael, let me begin with you. Your reaction to President Biden's speech last night.
I thought first, Terry, thanks for having me on here. But it's such a task to write a State of the Union, and so I want to show some love to the speechwriting team and Denai Reddy, who's a speechwriter of color, who's been the director of speechwriting since the beginning of the administration. A notable soundbite from last night's speech was that you can't love your country instead of racing history, let's make history. And I think both of those lines resonate with Americans across the country and across generations. And he did a very good job of speaking truth and aligning with values that matter to folks across the country.
Absolutely. That line got a big reaction in the chamber there, and no doubt we'll hear more of it as the president goes on to campaign, as he raises that issue. Jesse, are you part of the Obama administration once again in these communications area? Let's talk about the performance. Biden's energy. Everybody was wondering, can he demonstrate to the people he's got the figure to do this job? What do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, he did that. I'll be completely frank. I'm a longtime Joe Biden fan, and I, like a lot of people, were waiting with bated breath. Which Joe Biden's going to show up? How's he going to feel? How's he going to do? And it was incredible. I mean, it really felt like Joe Biden was back. I think a lot of it, he's been spending a lot of time being president, so running for president has been secondary. Yesterday, it felt like the campaign really began in earnest, and more important, I mean, he got through a lot. He covered a lot of ground in terms of content, but what's going to be memorable for people is the tone and the energy, and the fact that he's reminding Americans of two things. One is Joe Biden is a fighter. He's ready to fight. He's going to confront his political opponents and all of our shared collective challenges head on. And then two, that he's building a coalition that has room for progressives, our base, but also the center of the electorate. They're looking for a home right now, and I think they're going to find it with him.
That's a great point. I have felt that he was reaching towards the center at the exact moment Trump is saying, we don't want any moderates. If you're moderate, get out of here. We don't want Romney people. We don't want Haley people. And it seemed like Biden was inviting as many centrist moderates as he could. Michael, you mentioned that one line, you can't love your country only when you win. What else stood out to you as the president's best moments?
For me, I think what stood out was the fact that there was a commitment to defending democracy and calling